Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you ready?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me
is Michael O'Neill.
Mike, how the hell are you doing, man?
I'm doing phenomenal. I'm so excited for this week.
Really? Well, that's good. Well, do tell, or can you tell why you're so excited?
Well, I'm so excited because we have Chuck Zukowski.
Exactly.
Chuck Zukowski coming on tonight. Love Chuck. And we have a bunch of listener emails, and I'm told that we have some
Ask
mics.
Mike. I can't believe, to be honest now, full disclosure, I was kind of surprised, because we always get the emails about their paranormal experiences, stuff like that, the normal show email stuff.
Yes.
And then we got a few of these, hey, Mike, could you help with this? Emails.
Yes, I can.
Which is so strange. Which is so odd. I mean, not that it's odd that you would want to help somebody. I'm just not used to
they
seeing.
would want my help.
Well, no, I'm not even saying that. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying it's a new segment that we have never done in the many years that the show has existed. We've never had a help section like this before, and I actually find it quite interesting.
I think this is going to be phenomenal, and if we can do it every week, I would so be there.
So if you got a question or comment or need help, you can email me at afterhoursam@gmail.com. Goes directly to me, or you can go right to Mike, that was director, right? No, what is that email for you? What is the best email for Mike O'Neill these days?
Actually, yeah. Well, I have like 3 of them that all go straight to me, but director at odysseyparanormalsociety.com is probably the easiest.
And I am in the easy. Just ask. No, never mind. Anyhow, I am
you screwed that up. Too much hesitation.
It was because I was responding already to a text. As it were, the text line is open to 612-326-6874. 612-326-6874. Hey, that's our text line. That's also our call-in line. So if you should feel the need to actually, converse with us, that'd be all right too. But we also do welcome your texts, so don't worry. We are happy to get them. And so if you're more comfortable texting, do so, or call on in, or email. We do everything but smoke signals around here. That doesn't work out.
We don't do seances.
No, well, it all depends under the right circumstances. I might under the right circumstances do a seance. Why not? Right? Why not? Maybe we could channel. I don't know. I don't think I'd go there, to be honest with you. So I'm going through the emails, and one of them says, "Hey, Joel, I was listening to After Hours AM archives, and I came across one from way back in 2004. You're talking about the Philip experiment interview. Now, you'd said the Philip experiment was a thought form, but could you go further into what a thought form is and how the experiment worked? And I also watched a movie that you had mentioned in the interview called The Quiet Ones that chronicled this experiment. Was there any truth to the movie, or was that all Hollywood?" So, I don't know, Michael, what do you know about thought forms? And I'll open that up to you first.
Oh, I wish you hadn't done that, because I don't know anything.
Okay, now, a thought form, now I guess we're all going to learn together. I only knew a thought form because did a lot of research on the Philip experiment, getting ready for that particular show. And I do remember that show way back in 2014, conducting that interview with one of the remaining people that were involved in that experiment. And it was really, really interesting because what they had done was they got together and they created a ghost.
Yeah, I'm reading that now.
Out of pure just thought, what they did was they sat down, they named him, they gave a backstory. They really brought this to life, literally in a lot of ways, because towards the end, Philip took on a persona of his own. He was able to connect with them through many different ways. I mean, it's not something you hear all the time about, but thought forms can. And another word for them is tulpa. That's another word for thought form. And that's might be where you heard more about that, because X-Files prominently displayed it last new episodes. Remember? Way back when they had the redo of the X-Files? Well,
hey,
yeah.
I actually have that entire season still sitting on my DVR.
Still sitting there?
It's still sitting
You've
on.
never watched
I have all
it.
of my shows from like a week ago, and then it's like X-Files from 2018.
Are you ever going to get around to it?
I'm going to.
Want me to ruin it for you right now?
No,
okay.
No, you're not going to ruin it. Come on. I mean, this is the X-Files. It all ends the same way. The truth is still out there.
Well,
but,
yeah. But
I have heard of Topaz, and it sounds like these people created a poltergeist.
they did. They did. Or what they would call a thought form or a ghost, because some people do manifest their own hauntings. Oddly
Well,
enough.
right. I mean, and I have seen it where if a poltergeist is around enough and has enough energy, like put into it more over the span of time, that they can develop their own consciousness.
Okay, now
and personality and all of that.
What is your theory on a poltergeist? Because it does vary wildly from person to person sometimes.
I think the term is a little misused.
Mm-hmm.
I think that any time that there's object movement or anything like that it's a poltergeist, and that's not necessarily the case. For me, a poltergeist is pretty much a psychokinetic, like, realization of a living person's energy.
Okay.
They are all created by living human beings.
Psychokinesis.
But that they can did I say that wrong?
No, I'm just reaffirming what you said. Like psychokinesis,
yes.
then, is like you'd said. So it's our own minds that could be moving things.
Correct. And that over time they can take on a life of their own, where it no longer is based upon somebody's subconscious or stresses or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and I think Supernatural, that's where I heard that Supernatural did actually a episode on these.
On Tulpas.
On Topaz, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the answer...
So,
I know exactly what you're saying. And poltergeist, of course, everyone knows this. I'm sure that I don't even have to say it, but I will anyway. It means noisy ghost in German.
No, German for noisy ghost. Yep.
Yep, that's what that means. Now, a lot of people over the years have had a lot of theories about it. Some have said it is due to teenage angst. Like, you're getting a preteen that's going into puberty, right? They always say, well, prepubescent so-and-so was creating this poltergeist. But like Mike had said, that's not always the case anyway. But sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is a ghost moving things, right, Mike?
Well, yeah, but then it's not a poltergeist. It's just
it's
like an intelligent haunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's an actual spirit.
Now, what they had created in the Philip experiment in 1972, it's a really long time ago, is they decided in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, that they were going to make a fictionalized ghost. Now, there is no ghost, there's no lore or anything behind Philip. They just sat down. The experiment was conducted by mathematician A.R.G. Owens and overseen by the parapsychologist Mr. Joel Witten. Great name. Great first name, anyway. I love that first name. No, I'm kidding, of course. The test group consisted of ARG's wife, Iris Owen, former chairperson of Mensa in Canada. That's pretty high right there, Mensa. Margaret Sparrows, industrial designer, and Andy H., his wife, Lori. Well, what they basically did is they barricaded themselves in a room for a very long time. And they thought, and they thought, and they thought about Philip the Ghost. They gave him a backstory. They made him part of the aristocracy, that he was basically thrown out of the aristocracy for a romantic reason. And before long, after thinking about all this, and it started to manifest, the ghost did. Which I find fascinating because it speaks to the power maybe of our own minds, Mike. Do we
I do, and that
have the power to create?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, I think if you buy into the whole theory of a poltergeist in general, then you have to believe that we can create something like that on purpose. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's a really good way of showing what the power of thought is.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I did an experiment myself in a building, and an old building. Of course, it has to be old for this experiment to work. It works the best if it's old. And I made a story up. I had test subjects. I explained to them that George was washing the windows in this big building. He fell out the window and he died. There was no George. He never fell and he never died. But I asked them all to concentrate on George and try to reach out to George and talk with him via EVP. It took quite a long time for this to happen, but after a while, George started to respond.
So, was it the spirit that you created, or did what you were doing capture the attention of maybe an actual
now that's the
spirit
question.
That came in and took his name?
Yes, and that's the same question I have for this experiment. How do we know that they created this ghost, number one? Number two, how do we know it wasn't just an opportunistic entity or ghost or what have you that decided it wanted attention and they didn't care what name was going by? And it would fill in the blanks for them. So that's really the conundrum we're in. Because, okay, do we truly know? No, and we never will have the answer to that question.
No. Philip committed suicide in 1654. That's tragic.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a horrible, tragic backstory, which only adds to the tension of who he was.
Oh, his fake girlfriend or whatever was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake.
Yep.
Terrible.
But getting back to the emailer, and yes, it was a real experiment. It did happen. That is real, and allegedly it worked. Now, no one that I'm aware of, maybe a listener will correct me, has done such an experiment since. And maybe it was because of the holes that we had just talked about. Because there's no true way to know whether you created it or whether it was an outside influence coming in.
I guess my question here is, why were they doing it in the first place? Like, why were they trying this?
They wanted to prove, I guess, from what I gather from when I talked to the individuals involved, they wanted to prove the power of the mind. And these were all professed in their own way psychic people, right? They went in there. They already had a big belief in the paranormal going in. Each and every one of them.
Gotcha.
And so they're already predisposed to that thing. Now, if you were to take, let's just say you were to take laymen in there, Joe Blows, people that were not into the paranormal, ask them to put that same kind of thought into creating this, would it be the same result?
Probably not. Only because I just think that they wouldn't believe in the intent of it. And like one person would think that Philip was a NASCAR driver, while another one would think that he was a doctor. Like, I don't think that they could keep the energy consistently there to actually form a coherent type spirit, if that is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is just a spirit coming in and being like, all right, I'm going to just pose as Philip and mess with these people, then it doesn't matter who you have in the thing. It's just going to be the same spirit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's there. I do take note with that whole experiment. There was no, there was no checks and balances. There was nothing to test it against. You had to take it as a leap of faith that these people actually did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it does. Yeah, it didn't look like they had really a control group. Like they had a set of people who just kind of sat in a room and didn't do anything for however the same amount of time, or maybe they were non-believers, whereas then you had the people who were.
And then a few years, yeah, exactly. But a few years after that, we covered the story of Olivia Mabel, and she was allegedly killed by her own tulpa.
I could see that.
Now Olivia Mabel, and it's sketchy, so bear with me, guys. I mean, I had really hard time digging up actual records on this individual because they were sketchy, but there's website after website. Google Olivia Mabel, that's dedicated to her death, and you can look it up. She lived in Texas. Her son, she had a young son that ended up passing away, right? His name was Aiden. And she was so distraught about Aiden's death in 1990 that she basically created an altar and put all of her thoughts and feelings and just every day concentrated on bringing Aiden back. Every day, through her grief, overcome the grief. She retreated into her home allegedly for years. In September 1991 was the last time anyone saw her alive. But on February 27th, 1994, police received a silent 911 call from that house. They arrived into the home. No one had been in the home. Nothing was disturbed. They found her dead in a chair, clutching a possession of her son's. Now, many have gone on to say because of her grief and her concentration on bringing Aiden back from the dead, I guess, in some form or fashion, that it ended up killing her. The tulpa itself did. I don't quite believe that.
What was the coroner's reason for death?
Now that's where it gets funny. You cannot find a coroner's report on her.
Gotcha. So do we even know that this story is real?
We don't even know if this story is real. I mean, it was played off as real. It was played off as something that happened. Now, do we know if it was 100% real? No, we do not.
So I had a case a couple years ago that's right along this, where my client had an uncle that he was taking care of, and his uncle passed away in the house. And the mother, so that'd be the brother, blah, 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 was so, I guess the client's grandmother and the uncle passed away like really close to each other, both in the house. And the mother was so, as she was, grief-stricken and everything, and created a shrine.
Yes.
Down in the basement of pictures and like some of the uncle's, I don't want to say toys, but like figures or action figures or stuff like that, and wouldn't allow him to take it down. And it was stated that, and they had activity that they obviously called us in for, and we kind of got the sense of, because they were unwilling to let go, the mother was especially, but also my client was as well, that because they were unable to let go, both of those spirits were trapped in the house.
I was just about to ask you, do you believe that a massive amount of grieving tends to keep them lingering around?
I don't know so much as grief as opposed to the inability to let go. Mm-hmm. I think that it does, especially if you have that attachment to them. Like, I guess nobody's really looked. Everybody says, ghosts can attach to people, but can people attach to ghosts? I don't think
That's a good
anybody's actually
question.
asked that question.
That's a damn good question.
I remember I was watching the Dead Files once, and I was so upset by what I was watching that I actually sent Amy and Alan a question about it. But she got in the house during her walkthrough that the spirit that was in the house and like angry and was acting out and whatnot was pissed because he was on the other side, but that like a paranormal team had come in and like yanked him back, and he didn't want to be there. So I mean, I think that it's possible, but I don't think anybody really thinks of it that way.
Do you think it's all due to energy? That they're putting so much energy into that thought of that person or ghost now that it is brought right back. And well, I mean, would you almost call them a spiritual hostage at that point?
I think if they want to go, yes. Because I have a spirit box session, and one of the questions was, do you want my client to like take this stuff down and stuff so you can leave? And a female came through and said yes. Yes, I do, I believe was the answer. So I mean, yeah, I do. I think that you can almost consider them to be a hostage, especially if they want to leave and can't.
Gee, I would almost wager that's more common than we think.
Oh, I agree. I think that is too. We definitely, as the living people who are left behind, especially if there's somebody very close and like it wasn't expected, I think people can have a very, very hard time letting go. I mean, and you can grieve and still let go. So I think it's just that intent of, I don't want you to go. I want you here. I can't. I don't want you out of my life. Like, I think it's that thought process that attaches to it.
It's almost like arrested development of the grieving process, where they're caught in that holding on phase and not able to go through the rest of the phases of grieving, acceptance and letting go, and coming to terms, those kinds of things, and that would lead to unhealthy obsession with that individual that has passed, but also, like you'd said, it creates spiritual hostages sometimes. I'm not sure that we can use a broad brush here, but I would imagine there are many cases where it does create a spiritual hostage, and they're stuck, and they don't want to be there anymore because they have stuff to do too. They need to progress in their own spiritual journey.
That is true.
So
I just love the way you phrase that, though. Like, they gotta go grocery shopping.
They got stuff to do, man.
they got chores.
There's Netflix to watch. There's stuff going on. If you were dead and you could travel anywhere you wanted, a blink of an eye, there's so much I'd be seeing.
Yes.
Very
much so.
Right? I wouldn't want to be stuck with you over there blubbering in the corner. Let me go.
I will refrain from my comment that came into my head.
Next email. This is from Jacqueline. When you hear a spirit, when you hear them, spirits, ghosts, etc., around you, like you're talking to someone right next to you, what does that exactly mean, if anything? Well, it means a ghost talked to you.
Yeah, it means you heard a disembodied voice.
There's actually a phenomena where people will hear that real time, hear a voice, but won't capture it on a recording device. Now, begs the question, is it in our heads we're hearing it, the voice? And because, have you ever heard the phenomena called ear bang or head bang, where you'll be laying down or doing whatever, and you swear to God you heard a big kaboom, right? And it startles you and you wake up.
That happened twice last night.
So, some people have that same phenomena going on, but it's voices they hear. And I don't mean schizophrenic people. People are clearly mentally ill. That's barring that. I'm talking people that will be startled by someone yelling your name, which has happened to me, oddly enough. That I've heard my name yelled, and I look around. There's no one around. That whole thing going on. Sometimes it could be in your head.
Well, sure. I mean, there's a theory in the paranormal. I don't know really how you would ever go about proving it, but that spirits are able to, I guess, fine tune or focus on who their words are actually for. Because I know, and this has nothing to do with like disembodied voices, but there was an experiment done at the Villisca axe murder house where they lined up 5 recorders all in a row, all the same recorder. They all started them out, and they asked like some questions or a question, and they stopped them, and only 3 of the 5 recorders like picked up the voice. And so I think that they are able to maybe latch on to your energy and kind of piggyback their words onto it, so like only you can hear it.
Yeah. Now there are times that a group of people, I've been in a group of people, we will all hear the same word at the same time, out loud, like someone just yelled at us.
Yes, that's happened to me. And then nobody could figure out where it was coming from.
We were doing a ghost tour.
Everybody thought it was a different direction.
Yeah, we were going on a ghost tour. We were doing a ghost tour years ago in what's called the Evelyn Shirt Factory, and it was actually the home to the very first NHL game I ever played. That's kind of a cool story on its own. But it was an office building for a time, and we were all... We brought these newbies in. None of them had any paranormal experiences at all as far as almost a ghost hunting, paranormal investigation, because that's exactly what we were trying to show them, was not ghost hunting, because that's a completely different animal. And we have an email asking that same thing coming up, so don't worry. And we will give a detailed answer on the difference. So, that being said, we were in an office building. We were in the part of the building that was the offices, and this lady busts out laughing out of nowhere like a ghost. I'm not talking about one of the event goers. 4 of those event goers, after that happened, said, okay, this is just too much crap for me. And they left. They were gone. That's all they needed to hear was that lady laughing, and they ran out like they were, Scooby-Doo running away from the Mr. Carruthers. But it does happen, and so I find it quite fascinating, more than scary, because what's the medium they're using? How are they making that noise? What in the atmosphere is causing that to be able to happen? Because they don't have voice boxes anymore, so they're using another way of doing it.
Well, right, but I mean, if you look at it this way, yeah, they don't have voice box, but the voice box just makes the sound waves go out, which is what we hear, which is just another form of energy. Mm-hmm. If they're able to replicate sound waves, then they can talk just like normal.
But how are they doing it? Not that they're doing it, but how are they?
Well, I don't know, Joel. Why don't you die and then you can come back?
No,
and
what I think is they're using environmental electronics inside the air. See, everything has
could be
atomic charge. Everything around us does. There is charge even though you don't feel it right now, there is a charge in the air. And that's just an artifact of atoms moving, stuff going around us, just normal static, what they call microstatic discharge. And so they may be using that energy that is in that air, that is that microstatic discharge, to create that voice by using that energy. You're absolutely correct.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up also about that, it is possible for you to be hearing it. Like if nobody else hears it and a recorder picks it up, there is a thing that you can be called clairaudient, and that is the same as if you've ever seen the movie Ghost. What Whoopi Goldberg could do, like she could hear Patrick Swayze's character, but she couldn't see him.
That would kind of suck in some ways, though, wouldn't it?
Which one? The being the ghost or being Whoopi?
No. Only hearing it, not being able to see it, not being able to see the person with it. I mean that'd probably be pretty tough because I would think right away I'm going insane.
Well, yeah. I mean, at first, 100%, but until you realize that they are actually speaking to you and you can hear them. Then it's kind of like, well, fine, stay out of the bathroom and stay out of my bedroom. then it's just lay down the law.
Exactly. We have to run a break. We come back. More After Hours AM. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Right after this.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey. Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
What do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torin Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torin Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
And welcome back to After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me.
It's Michael O'Neill.
Oh, Mike, that was
That's
an
me.
interesting topic, subject matters to do the first half
Yes.
hour. I actually enjoyed talking about that because it's so much. That's really interesting. How we can create a ghost. But some people would consider creating ghosts as a thought form. And B, the phenomena of hearing voices from beyond in real time, which is actually not as common as you would think either. So you might be blessed with some abilities if you are hearing them, like Mike had mentioned, or you're clear or audio voyance, or whatever you call it. What was that gun?
Claire Audient.
Clear audio. That's what it was. My
Audient, not
Clear
audio.
Audient. Well, I like clear audio as much as anyone else. No kidding. I got you. Next one is kind of a sad one, but we're Chad. Hi, I'm Chad. I caught your show the other day over on iHeartRadio. I heard you reading listener stories. I have a story. My dad died 6 months ago. Since then, I have been getting strange phone calls. I will look down at my phone, and it's my own phone number flashing on the caller ID. I answered it the first time, and it was all static. I thought that's crazy, but phones these days, smartphones, I'm not sure if it was just me being dumb or if the smartphone's just too smart. Crazy few things. The thing is a few weeks had passed and it didn't happen again. But one day it did happen around 2 weeks ago. I answered it again. Static was on the line and I could clearly hear my dad's voice. He said he was sorry for not being able to say goodbye. You see, Joel and Mike, he died in the early morning hours, and I was not able to tell him goodbye. I hope that was him telling me goodbye. But it also made me think how many others are having the same issue going on, or is there a history of electronics being used, such as telephones, radios, and etc., in spirit communication? Well, yes. The answer is yes. There is a long history. And if we're not talking about a spirit box, which is clearly designed and engineered to talk to the dead. If you're talking about a normal radio, there has been a lot of stories about strange voices talking to other people, as well as phones, right, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Dave and I had Dave's my co-host on the Odyssey Files that I do every Monday night. We've actually been talking on the phone together, and all of a sudden he'll be like, "Did you just hear that voice?" Like, no. And then he'd be like, "Yeah, I just said this, or I heard it plain as day." That came in, and we're home alone, so it's not, and we're hearing it on the phone. Like, we're not hearing it in our backgrounds or anything like that. Mm-hmm. If you believe the setup of the spirit box, which is they talk through the white noise. I mean, that's really all like the static you would hear on an empty phone line would create. That allows them to talk through it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just another form of energy. And I think that a lot of people, like, they use cell phones now for spirit boxes.
Yeah. I personally have not seen a lot of great results. I'm not convinced yet that that's a great medium, but that's just me. Others do claim that smartphones work just fine. It would beg the question of, okay, if it's going over clearly the internet, how is it getting the static to use other than manufacturing its own? At that point, you could just use a white noise generator and get rid of the stupid, jumping noise.
Well, sure. But there is something else that I would like to say about this case. And I don't know if I have the term of it correct. Because I thought it was how I had it explained to me, but nobody else seems to know it by this name. But I always was told that there is something that spirits do if they choose to, called the dream walk. Mm-hmm. And that is, if somebody passes away, they hang around for whatever amount of time they need to make sure that their loved ones are taken care of, and that they're okay with the fact that this person has passed on, and like in Chad, right?
Yes, that's the
okay,
writer.
So I just want to make sure I have that name right. So in Chad's case, that anything that really needs to be said gets told in some fashion.
Yeah.
A lot of people will do, like, they'll be sitting at the kitchen table and they'll talk about this particular person and the lights will dim. Mm-hmm. That's just their way of saying, I'm here, I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure you guys are before they pass on to the other side.
Yeah. And being a guy that's been in radio as long as I have and worked with sounds and done all that stuff, yes, those devices are as manipulable, wow, say that 10 times fast, as anything else. So just because we view our smartphone as being so advanced, it's still working with the same energy that anything else is. And again, what have we explored throughout this first half hour? Energy is manipulated, and it can be exploited to be used. So just because a smartphone doesn't mean that it cannot be used as a paranormal investigation tool, a conduit to the other side to talk with you. I think you're right. If a spirit wants to talk to you, and the will is there enough, it will come through. It will use what it needs to use to get to you. I've received over the years several tapes in the mail. Remember microtape? They'd ship you, everyone used them for your answering machines. I've been shipped a lot of them. And please, if you're going to send me evidence, just email an MP3. Do not send me the tape itself. I do not have a microcassette player.
Who uses tapes anymore?
Well, there are some purists out there that believe that that's the best EVP medium, is analog. But that's a whole nother story. That's more forensic work than anything else. So getting back to that, I've had everything from grandma's voice to demon's voices on these recordings. Mm-hmm. And if something wants to come through, it will. But we got to get to, we got a couple more, but we're going to have to save those for next week because we have Ask Mike coming up. I want to make sure, but one of them, okay, there's one that we got to read. This has come from Tammy. Tammy says, "Hey, I listened to the Audiophiles radio the other day. Loved it. Good time."
You say audio files?
The Odyssey Files. Radio.
Okay, you said audio
I
files.
did, didn't I? It was like she was listening to. No, she probably says she was listening to the Odyssey Files radio right here on our network. By the way, thank you so much, Tammy. She loved the Hat Man episode. You and David did.
Yes.
And she finds that completely creepy because she has a shadow figure that follows her around that is always in the corner of her eye. Always. Like all the time. Which has not bothered her a whole lot because she started calling him Fred. But then Fred had a friend in a hat.
Mm-hmm.
She's afraid that the Hat Man... Does the Hat Man pose a threat to me, or am I just imagining things? Since I listened to your show, I'm completely worried about the Hat Man. Thanks, guys.
One, you're welcome. And two, yes. He is, not to put a fine point on it, but he is a humongous threat to everyone and everything. I can't really get into it like hugely, but that is an ongoing thing with Mr. Hatman. But he is dangerous, although it depends on what his motivations are. Sometimes it's just to appear and scare the living crap out of you, and that's supposed to do something like huge.
Only the Hat
and other
Man
times,
can. Yeah, sorry.
Say what?
Only the Hat Man can.
Hatman can't. No, any of the shadow people can.
Yeah,
it's just whether they do or not. Sure. But he can come and go as he pleases. He can show up anytime he wants, day or night. The thing is, it's just what he wants from you.
Yeah.
There have been stories of him just showing up once, and that's it. There have been stories of him repeatedly showing up, but not really doing anything. And then there are stories where he will literally attempt to manipulate you into taking your own life, or try to take it himself.
And I've heard stories where someone actually beat the living tar out of the Hat Man, like actually went into fisticuffs with him.
Yes, I have read that story too, and I thought that was hilarious. Not that I don't doubt it at all, but
yeah.
But yeah, he does seem to be at some point in times solid.
Yeah, and I would almost wager that the Hat Man, oh god, the Hat Man is
I know you love the Hat Man.
You stub your toe. The Hat Man made you do it. No, he didn't. Okay, I just stubbed my toe. But getting on to a more important part is the Hat Man is probably a bigger thing than we realize, to be honest with you. And it bears more investigation, I would say. It bears more to go into it. But right now, if the Hat Man, you saw the Hat Man and he's with your little buddy, what'd you call him, Fred? Then maybe you and, maybe he made the one-time appearance. But keep us posted. Really, seriously, if you are seeing the Hat Man more, reach out. We will listen and we will give you our thoughts and any help that you may need. Without any further ado, this next segment is, well, it's all about Mike.
Yes, not all about me.
It's all about Mike. Mike. Dear Mike. A couple weeks ago, I heard you on After Hours AM, and it's oh, God, I can't believe I'm saying this. You're a great addition to the show, Mike.
Just give it time. That'll go away.
And I am here to contribute to the Ask Mike section of the show. Now, Mike, I got a problem. I'm part of a paranormal team. And this is coming from Andrea, by the way, is her name. She does say Andrea. Andrea says that she's part of after she was done kissing your butt, she got into who she is. Andrea is part of a paranormal team, and she has...
Greatest letter I've ever gotten.
Right. An attraction to a fellow group person. Is it okay to date people inside of a paranormal group? Because many, she goes on to say, to many it's a very taboo subject. But we are both single and unattached. Is there anything wrong with a little extracurricular activity?
Yes and no. and I'll explain why. I guess it's different in your case because you're both part of that team. But being the director of my own team, I have had this happen so many flippin' times, and it's become such a nuisance to me as the director in trying to keep my team together, where I've actually had to put rules into place that I just won't allow it anymore. And that is, if something goes wrong with one of you, they often take the other with.
It's a lot like...
I'm saying that...
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I was saying, so as a director, that does not help the team at all. And also, when it comes to how you do things and how you investigate, who you investigate with, oftentimes it can be like if you disagree, sometimes that brings up arguments between you and the other person because they think that you should support them and vice versa. And I think it leads to drama that in what we do doesn't need to be there and should not be there. However, there are tons and tons of teams that have husband and wife.
Sure. But I would go on a limb and say that was probably a pre-existing relationship to the paranormal.
Yes, more often than not. Yes, they came into the team, and I think they actually are. Yeah, they came into the team as a couple.
Yeah. I would say that that's different than because I've never the old adage, in my opinion, is don't dip your pen in company ink. Don't. It's a lot like dating someone at work, right? If it goes bad, you guys still got to deal with that person if you want to continue to be part of that group. Am I correct?
Yes. And again, if you were to break up, again, that adds a drama and a tension and an awkwardness to the team when what we do is not safe when you bring that into an investigation and into a location.
And plus, what's worse is tainting the evidence.
Why would that taint the evidence?
There's some suggestion that the attitude you go in with can also reflect on the evidence you get.
I could see that, yeah. I mean, because your energy and your emotions affect the energy and emotion of the location.
Yeah, I try to go in neutral, like as neutral as I can.
Well, that's what everybody should do,
and see what bores out of the evidence, and not try to bring emotion into that moment.
Yeah, I guess my advice to you is to figure out what is more important, whether you have a relationship with this person or whether you're part of this team.
Yeah, you got to pick one, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, it might start out and be like, there's nothing wrong here, everything's great, but then a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, all of a sudden you get into, a lover's quarrel right before an investigation, and now you kind of opened up not only yourself, but the other team member that you're dating, and now you put the entire team at risk.
Well, if you walk in a room and someone's just been fighting, you feel that energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's there.
Did I just walk in on something?
Yes, exactly. And again, it comes full circle. What do they manipulate? Energy. Now, she does not say whether or not the group leader knows about this relationship. That would be interesting to maybe have an addendum email if you're willing to let us know. You don't have to say what group you're part of, just if they know or not.
Yeah, I would definitely not try to go into a secret relationship and not tell your director. Speaking as a director, I would go monkey bongers.
I
were to. Well, I can't swear.
Well, no.
I would lose my capucha.
Yeah.
If I found out something like that was happening, but that they were doing it like behind my back, because they all know my way of what I want for my team, and that's not only just for me, but that's to keep them safe as well, and everybody safe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, the next one is kind of along the same lines, but it is a pre-existing couple before the paranormal with the question. This comes from Michael. Hey, Michael. Meet Michael.
Hi, Michael.
He says,
What's up, Michael?
Mike, I got a problem. I am into the paranormal pretty heavy. I've been in it now for 3 years. I really enjoy investigating. It is my life's passion. My wife doesn't quite see it that way. She sees the expenditure of equipment, which is very expensive. I do admit I probably spend a little more than I should on paranormal investigation equipment. But she would understand. She just doesn't seem to understand. But the other thing that is causing the friction in our relationship is the time I am away. She claims I'd rather be investigating than be with her, which is not sometimes far from the truth, because I am seeking the truth, as any good investigator should be doing. But every time I want to get away to investigate, which is every weekend, it seems, it's causing a rift. How do I convince her this is good for me, this is good for the field, without her getting any more angry? Thank you. I think you're screwed.
Okay.
I think
no way. Well, no, not really. So, well, depends on which way he goes. So I've actually had this happen more times than I ever want to remember. So it's actually part of my interview process now, where I ask, do you have a significant other? If the answer is yes, my next question is always, do they know what you are doing, and do they approve of it?
Yeah.
And most of the time they're like, yeah, I'm like, well, pay attention, because that's about to change.
Well, yeah, and also money. I mean, you know, some of this equipment is really expensive. And Mike, I don't mean to rain on your parade. I really don't.
Nope.
But if she is the bookkeeper of the family, and believe me, we're not trying to beat you up here at all. So don't take it that way at all. But you know, if she's the bookkeeper of the family, and she's trying to balance those books, and you don't mention whether you have kids or not, let's just say for argument's sake you do, and that you're trying to find the extra money for shoes and do this and that, I can see where the annoyance. What's a REM pod these days? A couple $100?
Last I saw, the cheapest one was $179.
So, you know, it's a very expensive hobby. It really is.
Yes.
For some that buy the equipment. I don't, because I don't necessarily buy into a lot of that stuff. But that's just me, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But I can understand the friction of the expense. And now, not only are you spending money, and this is your segment. What the hell am I doing, Mike? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, you're on a roll.
Go ahead. You finish.
Okay. But no, you are completely right, because, again, I like to buy my own equipment. I like everything to just be my equipment, because then if somebody leaves, I still have all of my equipment. But I have spent upwards of probably $15,000 over the last 5, 6, 7 years building up this arsenal that I have now. So I know it's expensive. So I understand her take on that. I have lost probably a dozen investigators over the last 5 years simply because the significant other was like, no more.
Yeah.
So I understand where Michael is coming from. I can also see, especially since he does it that much, why she doesn't like it, because that is what has happened. A lot of spouses, female or male, do not understand how much time and energy goes into actually being an investigator. And they support you first because they're like, oh, 1 weekend a month? Okay, yeah. That's perfectly fine. But when it becomes 2, 3, and even 4 weekends, they're like, yeah, I don't like that anymore. And that's when it goes. So here's what I think you have to do. You definitely need to, one, realize that it's not all about you. Sorry to say, because I know you want to be like, well, how can I make her realize that this is really good for me? Well, you also have to take her feelings into consideration. She has a husband she wants to see and spend time with. So it's good for your relationship, which I think is more important than the paranormal, for you to be a part of. So I think what you need to do is you need to come to a compromise. And I think that maybe lowering the amount of weekends you're gone, like if you lowered it by half, 2 weekends a month, which I think is perfectly enough, I think she'll back off. And maybe get her permission. and I don't mean to say that as like a demasculate, I can't say the word.
Yeah. Emasculating.
Thing where you like need her permission, but in a relationship, you should talk about it. If you're going to buy a really expensive piece of equipment, I mean, if you're going to buy a K2 that's $60, I don't think she's going to say anything. If you're going to buy an SLS camera that's $1,275, she might have a case against you.
Yeah, that's a little. You know, most investigators that own really good equipment are single that I know.
Yeah, one on right here, hand raised.
You know, like they're the ones with the FLIR cameras and everything else. And I'm like, oh hell, man, I got a pen, paper, camera, recorder. That's all I need.
That's, I mean, but that's kind of on purpose. I'm like, well, I'm single. I have this money. Let me get it now, so when I do get into a relationship, it's not an issue. I've already got it.
Hey, you know what? That's good thinking right there. And also, you know, you don't, again, have you ever tried to include her in any of this? Maybe it's a simple fact if you just looked at her and said, hey, honey, do you want to try this?
Yeah, do you want to go with?
If you haven't done that
really
yet,
compromise too.
And if you haven't reached out and said, hey, I want you to be with me doing this, and if you haven't done that, give it a try. I mean, it might be what she's waiting for, is you to share your passion with her.
I agree. You know what, Joel? I think instead of hey, Mike, it should be hey, boys.
Well, I've been married a lot of years, man. That's right up my alley, that question. Man, I've been married a long time. I know. But that being said, I'm glad he asked the question, because I would imagine, or, you know, wanted to help, because I would imagine this is more common than we realize in that community, in the paranormal community.
Oh, 100%. Very common.
You know, and to maybe curtail your spending a little bit, or I don't know, buy secondhand if you can. I've seen equipment up for sale secondhand.
Sure, eBay, yeah.
You know, stuff like that. I mean, there's compromises to be made, and I think you'll be a much happier person once you do make those compromises.
Happy wife, happy life.
That is more true than you realize. That statement right there, that is such a true statement.
Well, I didn't say it to be cliche, even though it was, but
yes, it is a true statement. There was a time in my life where I was on the road 300 days of the year. Yeah, that doesn't work. It doesn't work.
And now you're here with us.
Well, we got 2 minutes left. I want Mike, go ahead, tell them about this big shindig event in October that's coming up.
So happy to do so. So, October 1st, well, that Thursday night is the VIP dinner, and then that Friday and Saturday, the 2nd and 3rd of October, is the Minnesota Perry Unity Convention. So I got a great lineup. I'm the organizer of it. I think tickets are very affordable. You know, you get 2-day passes for just $50, or single-day passes if you can't go one of the days. But you know, we have Grant Wilson and Amy Bruni and Adam Barry and Chip Coffey and Heather Taddy, and who's about to come on next, Mr. Chuck Zukowski, is also going to be there. Presentations all weekend. Chip's going to do a gallery reading. And it's just going to be an absolutely phenomenal time. And if you want something before that, if you go to Odyssey Events LLC on Facebook, I have a whole bunch of locations around the country right now that my team and I are going to be doing events at. And they're all going to be intimate, really fun locations. West Virginia State Penitentiary, Renwick Mansion in Iowa, that's coming up March 28th, where you get to stay in the mansion the entire weekend, sleep there and everything. It's going to be a great time.
Cool. I look forward to hearing more details as we get closer.
I would have given it to you, but I thought I was running out of time.
Well, you have 10 seconds left, so visit Odyssey Events.
Yes, I'm sorry. Visit mnparacon.com for that, or you can just go to, like I said, Facebook, Odyssey Events LLC, and that even has the Para-Unity Convention on it, too.
All right, we got to get out of here. Next, we ride the Alien Highway with Chuck Zukowski. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me
is Michael O'Neill.
Mike, we're taking a trip, man. We're taking a trip down the Alien Highway with Chuck Zukowski.
I'm packed and ready to go.
I am ready. I'm buckled in the best I can. We're getting ready to hit the highway. Now, Chuck, you know, he's not just another pretty face. He is on, of course, everyone knows him from the Travel Channel show, The Alien Highway. But he's been an investigator for a lot of years. This is not anything that's new to him. He is also a member of MUFON. He actually headed up the mutilation stuff, which I don't know how he did that, because I look at those photos even today and I go, oh my God, they did what to that? Stuff like that. So, I mean, the man is really, his credentials speak for himself. He's been doing it a long time. Chuck, thank you so much for coming on After Hours AM, and thank you for making time for us.
Hey, thank you. Now, this is the Joe Rogan show, right?
No, it's not the Joe Rogan show, but, you know, that's okay. I wish I had his numbers.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time now, close to 35 years. Which pretty much dates me. But, it's a lot more fun now when we do have the opportunity to do, live interviews like this one, as opposed before, the only time you would do it would be maybe if you're lucky to get on an AM show somewhere in the morning or something, or coast to coast, with Art Bell back, back in the day.
The master back in the day.
Oh yeah, but it's so much easier now to get information out to the public doing shows like this. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And, the thing about the alien stuff that's going on, I got to get your feelings on the disclosure stuff that's come from the government, because we didn't talk since that was leaked, all these new videos. Is the government leaking a little bit of bread trail for us, or is that truly an accidental leak like the CIA videos and then, of course, the jet videos, stuff like that?
I don't know. I have a feeling that nothing is really accidental. Back in the day, we would talk about the National Disclosure Project, which was, it was basically based on the National Disinformation Project, which the government would feed a little bit of truth and a lot of non-truth. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes way, way, way back where, the government is not supposed to lie to the citizens of their country, this one at least. But you could lie if you gave them some truth or a little bit of truth. And so I think what's been happening, especially with me in the past, 20 years ago, or 20 years or so, I should say, I've been contacted a couple of different times from someone within the government asking my opinion about certain things that I'm doing. And they're very, very polite, very honest with me. What did you learn about this? Well, can you tell us what you found, what type of evidence? And very polite. And always would say, if you have any other questions, give me a call. And the first one happened years ago when we just started getting cell phones. Were starting to get popular, and there was a big to do in the press where you would hide your, where they couldn't use your phone number. We had like everybody's phone numbers were pretty much hidden, pretty much from the public, because we still had our landlines and stuff.
Yeah. But
yet someone got a hold of my cell number that wasn't really public. And this is before Facebook, right? And they contacted me and wanted to know what I found about, what I learned about Roswell and the artifact that I found, back in the day. I think it was 2002 or so, and what I learned from it. But it was really, really cool to talk to that person. And then a few years later, I got another phone call. I can't tell you if it was the same person or not because it was years later. And then they had the same question about animal mutilations. What have you learned? What do you think? And that's when I realized that, there is another, department within a department that's running their own investigations. Now, a few of the animal mutilation investigations I've done, there's been some unmarked helicopters afterwards, maybe a couple of days, maybe a week, and, they're kind of hovering over the area where the animals were found dead. And at first, you get the people out there going, well, it's the government. They're the ones who's doing it. They're scoping out the next cow, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. No, that's not true. What they're doing is they're running their own investigation. Yeah. And that's what I've learned over the years. And then since then, I've had a couple of informants contact me about certain things, about getting stuff released to the public. And then we had one really good informant, former CIA, that was helping us with Alien Highway. So there is a department in there that wants to get information released. I don't think they're doing it. Maybe, I have the sneaky feeling that they're not really doing it, without letting people know they're doing it. I think they're allowed a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to start releasing some of this stuff. And why? Why not? I mean, we're, in the cell phone age that we have now, everybody's got a camera, everybody's got a video camera. We're getting some really, really good stuff. And because of the information highway, because of social media, people are talking, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. I gotta ask though, are they leaking this because they're getting us ready for something? I mean,
I'd like to say yes, but I mean, gosh, every 10 years, it seems 10 to 12 years, we always get this where, it seems like the government's leaking a little bit more and a little bit more. And it started way back with E.T., right? And then, and then even after that with Close Encounters, which was the big one, right?
Yeah.
That's when you actually saw the Greys. And J. Allen Hynek there smoking his pipe, towards the end. And supposedly the information was given to Spielberg. That's how he crafted the aliens. And so, that was a big deal back then. So I think they're starting to realize now that even with millennials, there was just so much alien UFO stuff that it's almost to the point now where it's not as scary as it used to be. Let's say if you went back to the 50s, with the day the Earth stood still and some other things like that, or even before that, World of the Worlds. I think people are a little more in tune of the probability and possibility of life outside our planet, and the probability of it visiting us, and they're very, very open to it now. So it's a good time.
It is a good time, right, Mike?
Yeah, I've got so many questions and so much to say.
Go,
That's
man.
why I'm just like, I'm just sitting here like, nope, I'm not going to ask that. I'm gonna. So, Chuck, do you think that? I have so many that I can't even narrow it down. But like, there has been a lot of rumors and everything and about aliens being here on the planet. Do you think that possibly our government and them are actually working together?
Oh, that goes way, way back. Gosh, I forget the name of the president that supposedly there was a treaty between us and the aliens, but I mean it goes way back to actually 60s, even to the 50s.
Wasn't Eisenhower on the golf course? He went to the dentist.
I was going to say Eisenhower.
That's what it was. Yeah. Supposedly went to the dentist and stuff, and then there was Edwards Air Force Base, and there was another place. I think it was even Wright-Patterson, or back at the time it was just Wright Field. So this has been kind of going on for a while. Matter of fact, if you go even further back, if anybody out there is listening, and maybe one of you two have done any reading from Zachary Stitchin, I actually got to meet him, which it was so cool to meet him. He talks about the ancient Sumerians and how we basically are part alien, supposedly. We're all hybrids type of thing, based on the ancient Sumerians' belief that that's how long aliens have been here on this planet, because we are part of it. That's based on Zachary Stitchin stuff. So it all depends on where you pick this up at, and pick up that story. Do you go back as far as ancient Sumerian? Do you go back to the 70s with Travis Walton? Who to this day, matter of fact, I'll be lecturing with him later on this year. To this day, every one of the polygraph tests he ever took, he's passed.
Yeah,
and it's really kind of it's insulting to him to ask him to take another polygraph test. How many you have to take? It's only because those people don't believe that they're forcing it on you to prove it. And he's done it, I think, five times at least. I think, and even the other loggers at least 2 or 3 times, depending on the loggers, and they've all passed. And then you go way back to the early '60s with Betty and Barney Hill, right? And my gosh, here you had a very intelligent couple back in the day, but then you had a mixed race couple back in the early '60s, which was a little tough, and they came public on this. And they put themselves out there, way out there, more than some people do today. So they're very, very highly respected in the UFO field. And then again, too, here you go, you got the Greys, and then you go back, of course, to Roswell, and then even before that, and there was even cases in the late 1800s where people were seeing UFOs and even cattle mutilations back in the late 1896 or 98, somewhere around there. So how far do you go back to try and is it our job to convince people that they're here? My job has always been I do the investigations, which is what I love to do, and then put the information out to the public and let them decide. And then the more people that listen to your shows too, if they can relate to some of the stuff that we're saying or that your previous guests are saying, that's even better yet. Because there's that that thought in their mind that oh my gosh, did I really see what I saw, or did I really experience what I experienced? And then when someone else talks about it, then they have this, oh my gosh, okay, now I'm not crazy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. A lot of people, especially a lot of emails we get about UFOs or ghosts or what have you. Some of them start with, I know I'm not crazy, at least I hope I'm not crazy, or you're going to think I'm crazy. Those are the three most common tags to begin with, but they all have something in common. They've seen something, something's happened, and when you match the stories up, there's a lot of common threads in those stories.
There is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I really think that I've excelled in through the years I've been doing this, and this is why I do ghost investigations, Bigfoot, UFOs, cattle mutilations, creature sightings, other, non-alien type creature sightings like monster sightings, is I've found commonalities in all of them. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing that within the past few years with ghosts and aliens also, there's commonalities in that. And the commonality, when you're running investigations and you're interviewing people, this is something you would pick up. Let's say if you're a detective or you're just a cop, something that I learned years ago, and then it was reinforced when I was a reserve deputy for 8 years, that when you're interviewing 2 or 3 people, you separate them and you interview them, and each one's going to have a little bit different story. But what you do is you look at the commonalities of each of the stories. Just focus on the commonality. Do not focus on the extreme weird. I saw an alien with 3 eyes. Well, I didn't see an alien. And then, or the other guy says, well, I saw a shadow, but all 3 of them saw a ship, and they all described the ship as the same. So that's what's your commonality. You focus on that, and because everything else could be exaggerated. Mm-hmm. And I found that with different investigations too, where certain things pop up in different investigations. You're going, hey, that's in common with that. That's in common with that. There's more to this. This is kind of like interlinked a lot of times.
We have a text that just popped in. We got the text line, and feel free to use it. That's why it's there, 612-326-6874. The question for you is, Chuck, great stuff. Love your show, and I think you're very knowledgeable, and I love to hear you in all these programs, but I got to ask, why cattle mutilation? What do aliens have to gain about knowing about steak?
That's a really good question, but it's actually not just cattle. I've done horse, dog, elk, pigs, goats. Matter of fact, I just got an email yesterday from an investigator from a Native American reservation about animal mutilations and the different types of animals that this particular person has investigated. Not quite sure why. At first when we started looking at this, especially with cows, it was bovine hemoglobin seemed to be the most interesting thing about the animal. And the reason why bovine hemoglobin is interesting is because when we first started doing in vitro fertilization on humans, we were using bovine hemoglobin. We were getting better results of making babies, using cow blood. And it goes even, and then the medical industry popped up and says, oh, no, we're not going to make humans from cows, so we're not going to do that until we actually perfect, human hemoglobin. But even back in World War II, the military was looking at using bovine hemoglobin as a blood source for our soldiers because it doesn't need to be refrigerated, and so the medics would carry a lot of it, and then once they give you some blood on the battlefield, they would take you to the Red Cross, and you get human blood, but that was kind of washed. But even during Vietnam, there were stories that the Vietnamese were using it. Now, that's bovine hemoglobin, but then what about the horses and the pigs and the elks and everything else? But I can tell you one thing. What's in common with all this? Now, the cuts are not in common. Sometimes what's in common when you have mass animal mutilations is they're all pointed in the same direction. They're all laying on one side, either the left or right side, and they have similar cuts. I did one a few years ago in Walsenburg where there were 8 cows in 3 separate locations, all within a week and a half, and that was like the most I've done ever. And they were all laying on this. Yeah, they were, except for one, because a rancher moved them, so I couldn't verify it. But 7 out of the 8 were all laying on the same side. They were all pointing east to west. That goes back to that 37th parallel thing. But what's common with everything is the blood. That's the most common, because regardless of how they're laying, and or what direction or what type of cuts, they're all void of blood.
So completely tapped out of any kind of fluids in the way of blood.
Yeah, majority, because you still have blood within the muscle system. So,
sure.
But I did do an investigation where the heart was collapsed. So it appears what happened was whoever killed that animal, they bled him out where the heart collapsed. And then once the heart collapsed, then the animal was dead, and so they didn't go in with a vacuum and vacuum the blood out. I think they used the actual animal's pump to pump the blood out.
So Chuck, there's a theory out there, a pretty popular theory, that like aliens are trying to create alien human hybrids, and could all of this blood be a way of figuring out our DNA and using that blood instead of human blood in order to make their hybrids, so that they don't, because if a bunch of cows go mutilated or missing, nobody cares. But if all of a sudden 8 humans go missing or get sucked all their blood out, the whole country and the whole world are going to know about it. Right. So do you think it's their substitution, so they can remain in the shadows? So instead of it becoming a worldwide catastrophe event, it's just a couple cows that 5 people really care if they're gone or not.
Or at least 10,000 since 1967 is how many we think so far has happened in the U.S. alone.
Well, who's counting, Chuck?
Chuck is.
Originally, originally it was George Knapp a few years ago that came up with that. And I never really thought about it. I'll go back to answering your question in a minute. But I never really thought about it until I realized what he was driving at was, for every investigation I do, I learn about at least another, and sometimes even 10 more that's happened in years before that to not only that rancher, but some ranchers nearby. So one can turn into 10. And you've been doing that, over a period of time, and all of a sudden, if I've done 10 investigations, they may point to 40. Actual mutilation cases, and so now you're like in the thousands. So yeah, I can see how 10,000 is actually if probably more than that, based on just what I've learned. But yeah, the theory, original theory was that that's alien hybrid when they were looking at the cows, and of course they were looking at bovine hemoglobin, but that doesn't compare to horses or anything else. The other theory, as gruesome as it sounds, was it was a nutrient, it was a food for the aliens, blood, and they don't
hire aliens.
Well, they don't eat
From
like
space.
us. They kind of like absorb it. And that goes way back to
psychic vampire aliens
from space.
Yeah, from space. Well, they would be from space, but unless you believe in the inner Earth theory, then they've been here all along. But the thing is there's always been a few different theories. Is it a food source, or are they, or is it helping, design, alien hybrids, alien human hybrids? And there was an event years ago here in Colorado I was lecturing at, and I've never experienced this before or even afterwards, but gosh, I hate to say this, but it was almost as if you want to call them MIBs or you want to call them hybrids, but after my lecture and things had died down, I went towards the back of the lecture room, and I was just picking up my laptop computer, putting it back away and stuff, and there was nobody around me. It was kind of dark back there, and two individuals walked up to me. I swear this happened, okay? And I looked at them, and they were identically the same height. Oh, I tell this story all the time so people can back me up if they've heard this before. They looked exactly the same. They were exactly the same height. It was a male and a female. They had the same kind of haircut, which was kind of interesting. They kind of reminded me of Edgar Winter, but they had really dark blue eyes, and they weren't muscular, okay. And but they walked up to me, and the male said to me, he goes, and I was doing a lecture on Roswell. He goes, really, really good. You're onto something. And he kind of gave me like a half smile, and she kind of gave me a half smile, and they turned and left, and that was the last we ever saw them. Because after that, I went, I talked to someone over there. I think it was Alejandro Rojas, who's with Open Minds, and I went later on to try and find him. And I thought someone, this was Comic-Con, and somebody was pulling one over on me. We couldn't find him after that. So you have some cases like that, and I've heard from other people too. Now, are they hybrids or are they MIBs? I don't know. But then there's that commonality with that story of alien hybrids.
Yeah.
Staring me right in the face.
Because I've had a lot of reports of the Men in Black, the MIB, as it were, and they don't look quite right. They don't act quite right. They're getting good at looking human.
Reptilians in human skin, my friends.
Yeah, but they're not quite there.
Oh, reptilians, I don't know about that. It's interesting about reptilians because... I've talked to a couple different Native Americans. Being here in Colorado, I've been pretty lucky in the Four Corners area, talking to different Native Americans from, I think we had the Ute tribe out here, and then Apache and Navajo. And it's interesting when you talk to the Native Americans that aliens, the gray aliens, have been in their culture for centuries. And one of the it was really, really unfortunate. One of the episodes on Alien Highway, we were in Utah investigating outside the Skinwalker Ranch because there's a lot of stuff going on outside. You don't need to be in the Skinwalker Ranch to experience anything. It's so hot in that whole area. But I interviewed a Ute elder, and unfortunately the interview didn't make it on the show because there was just so much going on. But off camera, I was talking to him and he was telling me what he's allowed to say and what he's not allowed to say, because the council pretty much dictates what they can release to the public, which is pretty interesting stuff. But I was kidding with him. We know about Sasquatch, Sasquatch is a Native American name, and he goes, oh yeah, we have a name for Bigfoot in a Ute tribe. It is blah blah blah. And I go, yeah, I bet you have a name for UFOs too. And he goes, yeah, it's blah, blah, blah. I went, oh, that's pretty cool. I said, oh, gray aliens. He goes, oh, yeah, that's blah, blah. And he actually they had a name for gray aliens. And then right after he told me, he stopped, and his eyes were like deer in a headlight look. And he goes, I'm not supposed to say
too much. Yeah.
And
you tricked him, Chuck.
You did. You trickster, Chuck. Look at you.
But we did this off camera. When it came time for, to interview him, I didn't mention it. But the bottom line was the Ute tribe has got a name for a gray alien, and it's been in their culture for generations and generations. So this goes way back, way before, Roswell. And the Ute tribe out here in Colorado, or actually Utah into Colorado, they've been here for hundreds of years. So it was really exciting to learn that. You learn a lot of cool stuff that you can't use, but then again, too, it's that commonality that that you can associate with other things too. Yeah. So as for the reptilians, I think it's probably more gray, the hybrid type of thing, because the two people I saw had very, very pale skin. Nothing was reptilian about it. They didn't look
camouflage, Chuck.
Yeah.
Like I could see their hands and I could see their face, and that's about it. And they were just a little bit taller than me too, about 6 foot. And I'll never forget that when I was looking at them. But I remember their skin was slightly off color and very smooth. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see makeup. Where you'd be surprised, some of the people that we've interviewed, they really kick on the makeup because they know they're going to be on camera, high definition of 4K. So you can tell when people are making, there's a lot of makeup.
I might wear some mascara.
Well, I think
foundation.
I guess
we have a really interesting text just came in. This individual was visited by the Men in Black years ago, 1979. I saw a UFO. I had a UFO encounter. I watched a UFO land. We watched this UFO land, and 2 days later, I was visited by two individuals that did not just seem right. They almost had a demeanor about themselves of being more like Spock than human beings. But one thing I remember about them most distinctly was the smell. They almost had an oily, fishy smell to them. Chuck, have you ever experienced that or heard that from anybody else?
No, and I'm really good with smells. My hearing kind of sucks, but I'm really good with smells. So I would have picked up on that for sure. But I did. But the Spock thing, I would probably say yeah, because the two people that I ran into, personality-wise, was very dry. And even though I didn't really think about Spock at the time, that's probably a good way of kind of somewhat describing that. I
would really hope that if people get visited by the Men in Black, that they don't sit there and be like, you kind of remind me of Spock.
Yeah,
like I can't.
And you smell like a fish.
I can't see somebody saying that in the moment.
And you smell like fish.
Dude, take a bath.
Yeah, come on.
I'm kind of afraid that the actual MIBs themselves, the ones that threaten people, are probably more human than alien. That might be the ones within the government that are trying to keep you, keep you quiet. Now I've heard numerous stories where people have had pretty cool sightings and they were visited by Men in Black, let's say, and most of the time, you listeners have to understand this. Most of the time, this is why I'm pointing towards the government more than not, because most of the time they want to find out if what you saw could have been a secret project, right? Something that was maybe in the area you saw it, and they either want to keep it hush hush or they want to find out if you actually saw something like that. And that's some of the cases I've seen. Now there was another case though in the San Luis Valley where and I know who this guy is. He just doesn't want to go anywhere with it because he's scared. He actually saw a craft, and then he saw what he thought was a cow hovering off the ground. You couldn't see the craft at that point, but he saw an animal hovering off the ground, and he just happened to have a camera with him and shot some pictures of it.
Those pictures no longer exist?
Well, the next day his house was ransacked and everything was gone, the camera, pictures, and some other things too. Now, I learned about this from his son, and because his dad had told him. And then I talked to another relative, and so, if this guy made it up, why would he lie to his kids?
Yeah.
And then he's in a hot area in the San Luis Valley where there have been UFO sightings, balls of light sightings, and animal mutilations. And one particular case years ago, one story was that there was a pig that was impaled on a fence post. Like it was dropped and impaled.
It was godfathered on him.
Right. Yeah, right. Pretty much. And then there was a cow that was found mutilated on a boulder. and cows, and they're not goats.
Yeah.
So, I came really, really close to getting the information on that cow in the boulder. I got so close that I thought I had it nailed down, and then the witness disappeared on me.
Another text coming in, Chuck. Really quickly before you ask that question, hold that thought there, Mike, just for 1 second.
Sure.
How do black-eyed children fit into this? That's what the texter would like to know. Are they hybrids?
Gosh, you know what? I don't think so. I think there's something totally different, and we could probably spend another 2 hours on that. But without I've actually toyed a little bit with interdimensions, and I don't want to go too much into that, but they might be dimensional, where it may be totally, totally different. So I don't know. I got some theories on that.
Me too.
But I don't think they're part of the Greys. I think it's something completely different.
Okay, good to know. Good to know, because man, if I had a nickel for every black eye, and it just popped out of nowhere, the black-eyed children tales, right? Just out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, we could talk about that later. Maybe on another show. But I think it's because I kind of unwillingly crossed over, and I've talked about that on other podcasts before. And
my show.
Yeah, here you go. And so I kind of put the black-eyed children in something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That's a scary one.
That is.
Yes. So Chuck, I got a question going back to the MIBs, because I'd like your opinion on this one. So tons of people have stories of the MIBs coming to their house, saying whatever it is they say, and then they turn around and leave. But there are also stories of like the house getting ransacked and stuff like that. What do you think has to be done, or what do you think the situation needs to be where the government or MIBs or whoever they are go beyond just being like, don't talk about this, to they actually get physical to the point of whether stealing stuff from you or even like somebody dies?
Well,
mysteriously.
Of course, you had Max Spears died a couple years ago. The investigator, he was found dead in I think it was a motel room or someplace in Poland, and this black ooze coming out of him. And a few days before that, he had texted his mom and said, "I screwed up," or something like that. I screwed up. I stepped over the line, and if something happens to me, go public with this type of thing. And then and so I have. If you go back, and when I first started doing this, I was really focused on crash retrievals years and years ago. So I was focused on Aztec and of course Roswell and St. Augustine, Plains of St. Augustine, some other places. But I've done enough Roswell stuff where I've talked to relatives. And I've actually had the opportunity of talking to a gentleman. His name's Eli. He's passed. Since passed, but he was one of the soldiers that actually guarded what he claimed were body bags in one of the hangars over at Roswell Army Air Force Base. But the thing is when you talk to the residents in that area, and I even Gail, a lady that I met who's passed too now, got a chance to interview her before she passed. They were threatened back in 47 by the government. They basically said that if you open your mouth, you say anything, you will disappear. Mm-hmm. And they were very bold about that. So there was no problem for someone from the government coming in saying, I will remove you from existence if you talk about this. They threatened the hell out of a lot of people in Roswell. That's why we know. For gosh sakes, it wasn't Project Mogul. It wasn't a high altitude balloon, because the electronics that they used on Project Mogul was the same type of electronics you could buy at Radio Shack. It was the instruments, the technology was not top secret. The use of the balloon was top secret, but not any nothing hardware or software. Well, basically, the hardware back then was top secret. It was just what it was used for. That was top secret. So, yeah, absolutely. If you want to start with Roswell about people being threatened, their lives being threatened, I'm sure it still would happen. And then with Max Spears, he crossed the line and, he lost his life over it. Now, a few years ago, there was Missouri and a couple of other places where, it seemed like within about 4 or 5 months we lost some investigators that, I don't think that their deaths were all related, but it sure seemed like they were getting hit by cars and stuff, and
it was weird. There's a run of them,
yeah, remember that? And so I was getting emails from a bunch of people, friends of mine, saying, "Watch your back, watch your back." And I tell you, and I'll be honest with you too. With this, is I know I've done this long enough now that I know where the line is, and I know where. And not to step over it.
Yeah.
And
what's the line?
You'll know. You'll know where the line is. Basically,
only when I step over it, and then it's too late. So just tell me what the line is now, Chuck.
The line is dependent on the investigations you're doing. If you think you're going to be getting too involved in an investigation that looks like it might be going in the wrong direction, that's your line. That's your sixth sense telling you, okay, stop here. When people are starting to talk about, stuff that's combination of UFO-like and maybe more terrestrial-like too, then you know that there's something going on there. Or when you're being followed,
well, that's a good
indicator. That's a big indicator, or you're being watched, or when you learn down the road that the area that you are looking in has got a skunk works facility nearby, or does have a small or a hidden base, and you learn that, and then so you just drop it. You go, okay, fine. I kind of know what's going on over here. I'm going to drop it. Now, I can tell you this though, that a lot of these small military bases, these secret or hidden bases, some of them skunk works, some of them not, they generally pop up in areas where there's been years and years of UFO activity. So it's almost as if it's not the UFO activity being caused by the military is watching the UFO activity. I have learned that in a few cases. So once you learn a little bit about that, doing, okay, there's a military presence here, there's my line.
Yeah. Exactly. And another question is from a texter, what does Bigfoot and UFOs have to do with each other? Is there a correlation between the two?
That's a really good question. I love that. I love that question. Thanks for asking it. Yeah, I think so. Now, there's some people out there who say, well, Bigfoot are alien pets. And they put it, but the more you involve in Bigfoot, I've learned that if you have a creature or whatever, mammal, whatever, that has never been introduced to technology, that their senses are heightened. Now, we all have a sixth sense, regardless. It doesn't matter what people think. We all have a sixth sense. It's called women's intuition in some cases. But if you're sitting, and I love this because it happens all the time. If you're sitting in your car or you're sitting somewhere and you just feel like someone's staring at you, and you turn around and and someone's staring at you, but they're out of your field of view, right? Then you felt that. That's that sixth sense. So we've all have that. Or you're walking in an area and all of a sudden something tells you, I better not go down there. Or I need to stay away from that. Something's, it's that little voice telling you, listen to that little voice, because that's telling you, there's danger ahead or something. So now you have a Bigfoots that have been living out in the wilderness. They've never adapted to technology. So their hearing is like our hearing, but after the first couple of years of us being kids and putting on headphones, we pretty much started destroying our high end, our high frequencies. Or if you were like me and played 900 watt PV musician with a Stratocaster, you pretty much destroyed your right ear or left ear. So Bigfoot, let's say, their hearing is like, newborn, or toddler, it's just perfect hearing. But then a couple of years ago, we learned that our own eyes we can see ultraviolet. But our brain over the years has commented that out. But scientists did a test on humans, and their eyes reacted to ultraviolet flashes, but not their brains. And so, the cones and the rods in our eyes are designed for that. But over the years, we didn't need it. But let's say you're Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Let's say there was no reason for your brain to comment that out. So now you have hearing and you have, visibility, and then now you have that sixth sense. So this is where aliens come in. So if there's any alien interaction in the area where Bigfoot reside, then they're on it, just like they would be in tune to, let's say, a vortex in Sedona, because they're very, very in tune to their environment. And I've learned that from cattle mutilations. Cattle are really interesting. Cattle are very, very in tune to their environment, more so than dogs are. If something's out of place in their environment, they'll either shy away or they'll go check it out. And this includes game cameras. Multiple times I set up game cameras in areas to try and find what's going on with the cattle, and they walk up and they're posing and taking pictures with it because it's interesting. It's small little game camera. Yeah. It's for a big area. It's automatically, different.
Cows were so vain.
Yeah, I know.
Who knew that? They're divas.
Well, they all got leather jackets, for gosh sakes.
Right? They're all divas. One thing that I did, a texter brought this up, and I'm glad they did, was about the Area 51 thing that was going on. Remember that? They got this big invade Area
the
51?
charge?
Yeah, and the question is, the government didn't seem to really care that Area 50 that people were going to charge Area 51. Chuck, is there nothing left in Area 51? Did they raid it? Is it all gone, or was it never there?
I think it's still there. Some of it has been moved. Matter of fact, some of it supposedly was moved to Schriever base here in Colorado Springs, and then some of it was moved to Pine Gap, Australia. But the Area 51 is still active. I think if they would have made a big deal about that. Yeah. I was a spokesperson for Travel Channel on that, and so they put a blip on their website about me telling people, yeah, sure, I'll go over there, but first off, you've already told them you're coming, so there's no sneaking up on them.
Yeah.
And secondly, the main thing is for 51 is, and this is what I've learned because I've seen Area 51. Just after Freedom Ridge was taken, I hiked up. I was like probably the second or third individual to hike up Tickaboo Peak with a guide and take pictures of Area 51 off at a distance. And what I've learned is Area 51, that their security is private security. It's like Blackwater type security. And the reason why Nellis or the Air Force uses, right, why do they use a private security instead of using, their own? Because they're not responsible for what the security does. If an SP or an MP or something beats up on someone, that they're liable. But if you have a private security, and that's why they were using Blackwater in Iraq. They can, basically you're not responsible for what they're doing. So no, you don't want to run into Area 51. You don't want to go, because they'll catch you. What least would happen to you if you're on Area 51, and this is I've learned from not only I've actually talked to a security guard from Area 51, but and to the locals there. What they'll do is they confiscate any of your media equipment, that could be your phone or camera, whatever you have. They take that, and then they'll call the sheriff's department. He's a couple hours away, so they'll hold you. The sheriff's department will grab you, and then there's a fine. Now this is just for the run of the mill guys that just step over the line.
Yeah, that just wandered on without. Right.
Right. Now they
have a shoot to kill.
I was gonna say shoot first, ask questions later kind of sign.
They do have a shoot to kill sign, but the thing is they'll keep all your media. So they'll take your micro SD card out of your phone, or they'll just keep your phone. If it's something that's embedded in a hard drive, if you had a computer, they'll just keep that. You may or may not see that again because, it's illegal. It's a federal offense. That's the other thing, too, is if you step over to Area 51, they can charge you a federal offense and you become a felon, just like that. And now you're a felon. just because you wanted to be goofy and run across Area 51. Now, the goofy people, they have a tendency of not, doing that. But, if you're a loudmouth person and you're trying to push your rights as a citizen and this and that a whole bit, they're going to run you through the washer.
Well, yeah, because some people yell, hey, we own it. It's ours. The taxpayer owns it. We should be able to see what's in there.
I can't find this anymore. I've looked for it. It's almost as if it's been erased from the internet. But back in the day, there was a law I could find that basically said that our government could experiment on its people. Mm-hmm. And as long as you didn't kill them, of course, there's tons of stories out there where they work.
Well, LSD, man, over San Francisco.
Right? San Francisco, and then even the flu, too, remember?
Yep.
There was a flu virus that was released to, just to San Francisco, and people died. Some people died because, they weren't in good health. That was our government that did that. And there was a law, a federal law that said that, that you could experiment on Americans as long as the intent was not to hurt them. But there's always possible, cases where that's not. And I can't find that law anymore. Well, it's the same thing too with lying. You're allowed to lie to the American people as long as you give them a little, real truth that I mentioned a little bit early. So, there are some things that, So no, just because we pay taxes doesn't give you the right to run a red light. As a cop, back in the day, it was that was so much fun because it's my constitutional right. You can't take my license. And I said, you go ahead and look in the Constitution and see if there's anything in there that says cars.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're not going to find it. You're going to lose that argument every time.
It's a privilege to drive. It's not your right to drive. But, who knows what Jefferson, put on there and Washington. They could have hit it in there somewhere. They could have foreseen in the future.
You never know. They could have been psychic. And and they're thinking that far ahead. But kind of begs the question, where do they come from, these aliens? Are they extra-dimensionals? What are we dealing with?
Well, what I liked to hear to the story going back with Betty and Barney Hill, with Betty Hill going under hypnosis and, pointing towards Zeta Reticuli. I love that story. And years later, they finally were able to find out exactly, where it was, based on the new star charts that came out. And here a couple of years earlier, she described it and wrote it down. So, I always loved that story because it seemed more plausible. But, the problem with traveling through space, speed is our deal. Speed is our hang-up. That's, speed of light. That's our hang-up. It's not, that doesn't mean that it's someone else's hang-up. Our whole thing is, it only takes us, so fast for us to get there. But the more and more we're learning about warping space or even using black holes, or actually opening an artificial warp and doing it ourselves. It's part of physics, and quantum physics talks about it. So eventually, we'll figure it out. 100 years ago, or even 150 years ago to 200 years ago, if you took a Bic lighter back in time, they would burn you at the stake of being a witch and stuff. And that's just a Bic lighter.
Yeah, right.
So we've technology, which is even more interesting since 47, how quickly technology bounced from crystal diodes and crystal transistors. And 2 transistors within 8 years, we have semiconductors. So it's really interesting how quick. And if you've ever wanted to read a book, a good one, The Day After Roswell, I think it was by Philip Colonel Corso. He talks about that, where he worked with reverse technology and alien technology from Roswell, and he was under General Trudeau, and the whole bit about how he had this material from Roswell, and he filtered it out to our institutions and to our companies that were under government contract here in the U.S. And so this guy was a dedicated military man, very highly decorated. He was really real known for getting our MIAs out of Vietnam. That was his big thing. And it was interesting when he came out with that book saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, this technology came from Roswell debris." The military never came out and actually discredited him, even to this day.
Yeah, well, that interesting. And you're right, because I know I'm familiar with the tale and the person, but that's also where a lot of people say we get fiber optics from. Thank you, aliens.
Fiber optics, lasers, night vision, microchips. And I'm a microchip designer, so, but it just seems to me that, in the early 50s, we had, ceramic or even, crystal diodes and tube transistors. And then I think it was Bell Labs came out in the early 50s and said, hey, we're going to patent this idea. And then it wasn't until like the late 50s where they actually had something that they could show as a prototype. Mm-hmm. But I think they were one of the few people that was able to patent an idea, without a prototype. And that was that whole story years and years ago. Now I'm going way, way back with Bell Labs and the Bell Labs notebook and the whole bit. I don't know if you guys remember any of that stuff, but they were supposedly this notebook back in the early 50s. That kind of pointed it towards the Roswell, and I don't want to knock Shockney, I think, and the other people who actually designed the transistors, but if they worked for the companies and they that were nudged, got a little nudge from the military, and then they were able to utilize that information, and maybe they had nothing, maybe they had no idea
Chuck, do you think that the technology is payment for experimentation on us?
Well, that's supposed to be the original contract was allow us to experiment on humans or your citizens and let us take some of your resources from your country. We promise not to take too much resources. We promise not to hurt or kill, your humans. We may rough them up a little bit, and in exchange, there's the technology. Yeah, but that was the initial contract. Supposedly was, we were the payment for technology, and so if that was the case, and then everything we see flying now is derived from that. Now here's the sad part is when people ask me, well, how can you be sure that black triangle that people saw floating and just shoot off? How do you know it's not, our technology? And I always say, I would like to think that if it's not alien human, technology like, reversed engineered, I'd like it to be more alien. And the reason for that is because if we have anti-gravity technology, and that doesn't use fossil fuels, that doesn't hurt our environment, it's not killing this planet, blah 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 blah. I would hate to think that our government is keeping that from us, and we're slowly killing ourselves while the fat cats are sitting on this technology that could make things a million times better.
I cannot wait until you come on the Odyssey Files in a couple weeks, because we're going to be discussing this.
Oh, there you go. I love it. It's a good discussion when you talk about that stuff because, right off the bat, people just seem to think, well, it's our technology. I'm going, great, then how come they're not sharing it with us? Yeah. They must have had it for how many years now? Let's go way back to the 40s where the Foo Fighters. Not only did we see it, the Japanese bombers and fighters saw it. And those are the balls of light that people are still seeing today. Yeah. I mean, very, very recently, people are still seeing balls.
Exactly.
And we see, Chuck, we see balls of light near cattle mutilations too.
I've read that, many accounts of that as well. Chuck, we only got 1 minute left. Tell the audience how they can get a hold of you, with your websites, all that kind of good stuff, and any appearances you got coming up.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you what. My website is UFOnut.com. That's UFO Nut. And the reason for that is back in the day, they used to call me a nut. So that's where that came in. So check that out. The other thing is oh my gosh, my appearances. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Sorry. So I'll be at Contact in the Desert on May 29th through June 1st. Then I'll be at the Minnesota Para-Unity Convention in October 1st.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, and then in Pittsburgh MUFON Conference, I guess, on November 7th in Pittsburgh. So I've got, I don't do a lot of lectures because it takes away my weekends, which takes away my investigations and stuff.
Sure.
But there's certain ones out there, like the ones I just mentioned, that are definitely worth doing.
Very, very cool. Chuck Zukowski. Check him out on the Travel Channel. If you haven't seen Alien Highway, this is your chance. You got to check that out. It's going to blow your mind. Till next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other. Hey, keep looking up in those skies because they are there. You just might know. You might see them. After Hours AM is a production. Midwest Radio Productions. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And please visit www.americas-most-haunted.com.